Another week, another schooling of news and notes from my partner in crime, John Wertheim. John, what is going on this week? What have you been up to? You've been traveling around talking to some of the biggest players in the game. What's been going on?
I did not have my $300,000 watch stolen, so that was
Ooh,
not me.
too soon.
Yeah, exactly. What's going on? Some news and notes. Yeah, I had an interesting week. I spent some time with the bravest woman in tennis, with Daria Kasatkina. TV piece to come, but she is someone we all should be applauding, admiring, supporting her when she plays, watching her blog. She's really extraordinary. And yesterday, I was in Bucharest, Romania. Sat down with Simona Halep, and we talked a lot about what she's been through the past 2 years. And I got to say, I give her a lot of credit. She is not ducking this one, and she seems to know that part of her sort of rehabilitation includes taking on all these questions that people are wondering about and asking. And she, showed up by herself. We went to a tennis club owned by Jan Chiriak, which is a remarkable story in and of itself. But, we sat down for an hour, and she had no handler. She had no notes. She had no talking points, no lawyerly statements. And she answered everything I asked. And I thought that was really honorable. TV piece to come. What else? News and notes. It looks like this Saudi. You want to talk Saudi? Should we have everyone go to sleep?
Yeah, we haven't talked Saudi in hours. We should definitely do it.
Yeah, exactly. What are we going to talk about when this thing gets settled? No, the big Saudi offer seems to be. I don't know if it's expired, but it seems to be sort of a little bit in peril right now. We always knew there was it was a ticking time clock. They obviously signed with the women. I do think they're going to stay in tennis. Your favorite endorsement, the rankings that the PIF has sponsored on the men's side. I think you can expect a similar announcement on the women's side. The Saudis still want that big 1,000 event, but I'm not sure that $1.3 billion flat offer still exists. I mean, with this announcement about the women and with some of the other sponsorship, I'm not sure what that's going to look like. This is all going to come to a head in Madrid. The WTA will hopefully announce their CEO. The four majors will be there. Andrea Gaudenzi will be there presenting with Steve Simon, which is not something we often see. Men and women, this is cats and dogs. This is ATP and WTA both presenting together. A lot of politics. I've heard that the schedule may even start earlier next year, as hard as that is to believe, and that the last week of December will actually be week one. Can you believe that?
Wait, say that again?
The schedule will actually be sort of a week zero in December will be week one. So the Australian Open will start on that, whatever it is, January 12th, I want to say. So the 3-week lead up will actually start in December. So all this talk about the off season is too short. I think it's on a Tuesday this year. It looks like we are not going to get the shortened off season that everybody seems to want. Also, keep an eye on Queen's Club. It will probably be, I heard it would be this year, but I don't think it's going to happen in time. But next year there will be, I'm told, a women's event as well as a men's event at Queen's Club before Wimbledon on the grass. I think that's sort of an audition. Can these guys stage one of these 1,000-level mixed 2-week events? So the women are going to get a big grass event before Wimbledon, probably in 2025. That's about all I got.
The interesting. It sounds like posturing. Like, I don't know why the Saudi offer would have been good a month ago and why it's changed now. I don't think the numbers for the WTA finals would put them out of the equation for something else that's interesting. My first reaction without actually knowing anything about it is there's like a soft offer and you're kind of testing the waters and announcing it, maybe getting player feedback. But that seems a little strange. As far as Queen's Club is maybe might be my favorite venue in tennis. It's this old clubhouse from hundreds of years ago. They kind of tuck in on one side. They build the stadium around. The question is do they have to build more stadiums? It's literally surrounded. It's like a tennis club, but it's surrounded by apartments, that are 5 or 6 stories high. There's nowhere to go. Like, it's not as if you can find space in the heart of London to build it out. And I guess my second question is every 1,000, are the 1,000s never going to live independently from now on if there's a new contract? Does it have to be men's and women's combined forever and a day? Is that generally accepted? Because that's great. I think it's better for the game, but also like the just the venue size of Queens and doubling the tournament space on a surface that gets worn out. And the more worn out it gets, it's not as if it's like a hard court or a clay court where you sweep it and it's good as gold. Like the wear and tear matters. There's no indoor option. If it rains, which it's done before in London, that stresses me out a little bit because Queens is such a perfect event as is. I think it's worthy of a 1,000. I guess are all 1,000s moving forward combined 1,000s?
I think they are. I mean, Monte-Carlo is sort of the wild card in this, but yeah, I mean, I think whether this is the Godenzi take the Saudi money, combine the tours model, or this is the Premier Tour, which really seems to have lost a bit of steam these last few weeks, whichever model is sort of going to get implemented, it does seem like everybody is in agreement that these events should be long, 12, 14-day events. They should be both men and women. They should be mixed. And you're right. I mean, some events you go to the venue and, hey, if we need to build onto the golf course, right? I mean, you're in, say North Carolina, for instance. No, I mean, there's some places where the real estate isn't an issue, right? We can build a few more courts down the road. We've got the space. Even ironically, even Wimbledon has that extra space across the road on the golf course. Queens Club doesn't have that. So I think that I think this is a bit of an experiment. The way it was told to me, it was that it would be back-to-back weeks, so it wouldn't necessarily in 2020.
Oh, okay, that's better.
I mean, yeah, but these are longer events. But you're right, grass is a different animal. But I think the short answer to your question is yes. I think we are all sort of as much disagreement and as much sort of divergence as exists here. Everybody seems to agree that tennis is at its best at these big events when they're men and women. I don't know if you want to go here, but I couldn't help thinking a lot about tennis and this very topic when we saw the ratings for the women's college basketball tournament. I don't know if our international audience is up on this, but the women this year, NCAA tournament in basketball, the women absolutely crushed the men's in ratings. I mean, these women's games, I don't know if you saw some of these numbers. I mean, they were doing bigger ratings than the World Series, than NBA Finals, than just about, than run-of-the-mill college football games. And I kept thinking, this is why these arguments over equal prize money are stupid. Because one day, the women's ratings and attention and buzz, and that'll soar, and then it'll go down, and the men will take over. And this is why it makes sense to sort of hedge your bets, pay everyone the same, hold these events. Sometimes the women will drive the action, sometimes the men will, and let's move on and not argue over nickels.
Here's what I've been consistently saying forever. And for context, like I was always the person who I kind of, right or wrong, I like to at least express what I thought. I tried not to make it super knee-jerk and failed sometimes. Now, do we value the best numbers of all time against a sport that is now struggling but has name value like the World Series? And also, do we value the tours and their value together, or is it fair to judge them in a silo, right? So the most obvious example is WTA finals, the last 2 years, and how the free markets have spoken to it, versus a change of venue and being in Turin, where it was 17,000 people a day going crazy. I understand what you're saying. And by the way, props to Alexis Ohanian, who in tennis world might be better known as Serena Williams' husband. He has been one of the biggest investor in women's sports, and is now kind of getting his "I told you so" moment that is well deserved. I taking a college basketball rating where you have certain personalities and some divisiveness, the Kim Mullarkey story going into the Final Four, it seemed like there was this like cyclone of almost like every story is a political story mixed with Iowa versus LSU mixed with, it's like these perfect circumstances. Can we draw a straight line to every women's sport everywhere and the market because of this moment in time? Or do you think that's just the general direction of where everything is going?
Did you call her Kim Malarkey as a Freudian slip or as one of the all-time great nicknames that I think you just gave to Kim Mulkey? Malarkey's
I think it
great
was
though. It's fantastic.
no. I have no. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, but question. I said what I said.
All right. No, her Kim Mulkey is her name, but to many
Malarkey.
people, she is full of malarkey. So you nailed it. No, I think that's a good point. I mean, my take on this too is that it doesn't have to be an either or, right? And you can say to a CEO, listen, here's your compensation. And if you hit these benchmarks, these bonuses will kick in and there will be escalator clauses. I mean, I think there's a way to divide this pie equitably. So maybe the men and women don't necessarily get 50-50 when the men's year-end final is a smashing success and the women's is played before, 11 people and a gatekeeper in Acapulco. Maybe there's a way to have equity and also have some sort of mechanisms where you're rewarded for success and perhaps downgraded for lack of success. So I don't necessarily think it's an either or. I mean, I think there are creative deals to be made. I just think this whole debate over ratings and prize money, listen, one year the Williams sisters played doubles and the ratings are better than the men's final at Wimbledon. And the next year, Roger and Rafa play and blow the women's ratings out of the water. And I just think tennis spends way too much time thinking about how to divide the pie and not grow the pie. And I think your point is a good one, that we don't take this one moment in time. We talked about a few episodes ago, we talked about the danger of cherry picking numbers and data. And I think that probably holds here too. Was this year in women's college basketball a one-off, or is it a sign of things to come? I just think there's a way that tennis can have equity, which doesn't necessarily mean dollar for dollar equality. Set up a business model where everybody is baked in, everyone's incentivized. If the men get 10 times the sponsorship, maybe there's a way that we don't have a 50-50 model, but figure out something where everyone feels bought in, everyone's got skin in the game, and let's move on and grow the pie, not divide it.
But aren't we there? Like, we just talked about that every 1,000 moving forward is a combined event. We're talking about combining tours. The equal prize money situation is something that tennis was ahead of, and people argue imperfections way more full-throatedly than they argue progress, just generally, right? Like, you never want perfection to be the enemy of progress. In my mind, tennis has been ahead of the curve on all of these issues compared to any other sport. So what I don't want is for tennis to fall under any sort of critical lens, which would imply that there is a lack of forward thinking on equality in our sport, considering what we've done, what the track record is, what the intention base has always been, and what most of the tennis world's buy-in has been from it. And I'll give you an example of, I'm all for all of the stuff. I'm all for progress all the time. I'm open. I'm just open on all issues, culturally, significantly, economically open. To give you like an example of like a thought process on a tricky topic. I think it was 2007. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong by like a year on either side. It was at Wimbledon. And Gilles Simon said something in press, basically saying, his main argument may have been women played 2 out of 3 sets. It's just a joke that there's equal prize money. So I had already, thankfully, played my match, gone through press that day, but 2 days, in 2 days, I'm reading the story. I'm like, oh no, I'm for sure being asked about this 2 days from now. 100%, by all the American journalists. So I had what I thought was a pretty thoughtful response. I said, listen, it's very simple to me. If all of you in this room find some sort of straw poll, I don't know if it's on the ground research, I don't know if it's based in TV data, I don't know if it's based in whatever it is. I go, and you find that we, meaning the ATP Tour, aren't living up to our side of this agreement, I go, I'll be the first person to raise my hand and say, like, we should be getting less if we're actually creating less. I go, but I disagree with the premise of length of matches dictating payment, because 2 out of 3 sets, if you rate higher than 3 out of 5, is actually more valuable because you're getting those numbers, you're getting higher advertisement. If U2 goes and plays an hour, they are worth more than the next best band or that is playing for 4 hours. Like, time spent on court, I think, is the laziest argument. It's product, dollars in, dollars out. Are people watching? Can we monetize? Can we grow the game? Can we create more tournaments? Can we make every single week self-sustaining on tour? I don't care, how you're born. I don't care when you're born. I don't care. It's very simple. Can you create the market for what you're selling? And I think tennis has been ahead of the curve. I think there's been more unity, equality across genders, across prize money, across thought than any other sport. So I would say that we've kind of been ahead of that criticism, and I hope it continues. Go ahead, producer Mike.
Yeah, I mean, last year for the U.S. Open, when you look at it, I mean, Coco's finals drew 1 million more viewers than the men's final, but more importantly, drew more 18 to 49 year olds.
That's huge.
Up against football, both of them.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to know that, I mean, people will watch what they are interested in, and it, regardless of gender, they're going to watch the storyline that they like. And I think that's what was so impressive about the women's basketball this year. And I don't think it subsides. I think it's created new fans. And I think the quality of the game is much better than it was because there's been investment in creating better players. So I think it's exciting to watch, especially as a dad of 2 girls.
Right. I don't hear any malarkey. No malarkey.
No, I mean, exactly. But also, isn't this a total value add? Isn't this a great market advantage for tennis, right? That apart, you and I started this podcast. We talked about Kazatkina and Halep. I mean, I have friends who love the NBA and they can't name 3 WNBA players. That it's not just the economics, it's not just the ratings, it's just part of the culture. No, I always say that nobody goes to the tennis and says, I love Coco and I love Iga, but who's that guy from Serbia and who's the Spanish guy with the big muscles? And nobody says, I love Roger and Rafa, but who are those 2 sisters from Compton? I mean, if you like tennis, you don't draw these different. I mean, you and I talk just as easily about the WTA as the ATP, and I think it's a real value this sport has, and it shouldn't get. I mean, when you take these sidetracks of best of 3, I would say that the WTA should be like, yeah, you're right. We'll play best of 7. Pay us more. Like all these detours about length of match and who's bringing in what's, but it's also it's such a value for tennis. I mean, instead of arguing about it, this is like, name me another sport. I mean, same with golf. There's a zero overlapping Venn diagram between the PGA and the LPGA. This is a real tennis virtue. It should lean into it. All right, that's my sermon.
I say this like once a week to somebody. I said a small enough sample size can tell any story you want it to tell.
Yeah,
right. If you take one match and compare it to one match on the same day and make that your rule, anytime you want an accurate portrayal of a stat that is speaking to you, whether it's ratings, whether it's sponsorship, you just scroll out a little bit. The bigger you make the sample size, the more accurate data you will be parroting. What I will say, you mentioned that 18 to 49 demographic. That is the demographic. When you are no offense to anyone slightly older, and I'm getting to the older side of that. Thank you. The older.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
I think my connection's. I think I'm losing my Wi-Fi.
That is valued differently than other demos because that is the growth demo. That's the demo that's going to be with you. That's the demo that you can establish nostalgia with. And the higher end of that demo are in, for the most part, in prime money making years as well. So that's why that is such a significant stat and why Coco's run was so important. JW, you got anything else for me, or let me off the hook? And it's all Brian's all the time for the rest of the episode.
I'm a warm-up band, man. Bring on the boys.
All right, JW. Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.